be judged. I know people will say I'm selfish, irresponsible, heartless. Maybe I am. I don't know. But I also know I'm the closest I've been to feeling okay in years, and the idea of going back feels like stepping into a fire on purpose. Update 1. I ended up staying longer than the week I told the kids about. It wasn't intentional at first. I just couldn't bring myself to pack up my things and go back to the noise and chaos. Every morning, I'd wake up in that small cottage and feel so steady, almost normal. And the second I'd remember the house and the kids and the constant demands waiting for me, it was like someone tipped a bucket of cold water over me. I knew I wasn't ready to go back, so I didn't. I found a small rental near the beach. Nothing fancy, just a short-term place, but it felt right. I signed the lease before I even thought it through. I know that sounds reckless, but it didn't feel reckless in the moment. It felt like something I should have done years ago, long before I hit this point of burnout that I can't recover from. Daniel was still around at that point, but things shifted with him too. I had a small breakdown one night, just this quiet collapse where my body felt too tired to hold itself up. He overheard more than I meant him to, and it changed the way he looked at me. Not in a bad way, but in a cautious way. He told me he didn't want to be pulled into a situation that looked like running away from responsibilities. I understood, but it still stung. I didn't leave to chase a man, but it seems like everyone thinks that's what happened. While I was figuring things out, my sister decided to drive over to my house to check on the kids since Terrence kept telling her I wasn't answering him. The house wasn't spotless, but it also wasn't the disaster everyone expected. Terrence had been doing fine. The basics were handled. They weren't starving or living in filth. But my sister still tore into me the second she saw I wasn't coming back. She didn't say it directly to me then, but I could hear the anger in her voice messages later. She packed up the kids and took them all to her place, and by that evening she was saying she was embarrassed for me. The worst part happened when I finally called home. I knew I had to at some point, and hearing the silence on the other end of the line when Terrence picked up made my stomach twist. He wouldn't talk to me. He said nothing at all. He just handed the phone to my sister. She didn't hold back. She told me she was filing for temporary guardianship because what I did counted as abandonment. I didn't even know what to say to that. She acted like I left them in a parking lot. I told her I wasn't unstable. I wasn't having some crisis. I was finally taking care of myself, and she said that made it worse. She said the kids needed stability, and that clearly wasn't me. I know people will think I'm delusional, but I don't regret choosing myself. Not for a second. I'm not disappearing off the face of the earth. I'm not saying I'll never see them. I just can't be the day-to-day parent anymore. I was drowning, and every time I tried to come up for air, someone pushed me back under. I don't see what's wrong with acknowledging that I'm not capable of giving them what they need full-time anymore. The real shock came from Mila. She's been telling relatives that I left to party with men, and everyone believes her because it fits whatever dramatic story they want to tell. Terrence didn't bother correcting her. He's just letting people run with it. I didn't expect him to protect me, but it still hurts to know he didn't care enough to tell the truth. Then I got a letter from the school. They're threatening to report me for parental abandonment. They want me to come in person. If I don't, they're escalating it to the state. I felt sick reading it. Not scared, just sick. It's one thing for family to make assumptions. It's another when the system gets involved. But I'm staying here. I'm building a life here, and everyone else is going to have to figure out their own way forward the same way I had to. Update 2. Going back home felt strange before I even pulled into the driveway. I kept trying to prepare myself for some dramatic showdown or shouting match, but what I walked into was worse. The kids weren't yelling or demanding anything. They were just quiet, cold, like I'd walked into an empty waiting room where everyone had already made up their minds about me. Terrence barely looked at me. He had this calm, overly controlled way of standing there that made my stomach flip. For months, he'd been the one trying to hold the house together, and I guess I expected anger, or at least some guilt tripping. Instead, he just told me he didn't need me anymore, and that he'd already sent in paperwork about emancipation. He said he wanted it so he could take care of Eli himself, because someone had to. Hearing my oldest talk like that, with that steady voice I used to rely on when things got rough, made me feel like I'd been erased from my own family. He looked older too. Not physically, just something in his eyes that said he'd already accepted a future where I wasn't part of the picture. Mila didn't hide how much she resented me. She kept her arms crossed and wouldn't look up. She blamed me for embarrassing her with relatives and ruining her routines and making everything harder for her at school. She admitted she was the one who told everyone I ran off with some guy because it felt easier than saying I'd just quit being a mom. Hearing her say it so plainly hit harder than I expected, and I know I shouldn't have been surprised after everything, but I still felt it like a punch. Eli hardly said a word at all. He kind of hovered behind the couch and watched me like I was someone visiting the house for the first time. He wouldn't come near me, wouldn't hug me, just whispered that I left while he was sleeping. There was this tired look in his face that didn't belong on a 10-year-old, and I didn't know what to do with it. Before I had time to process any of it, the social worker showed up because my sister had already filed the emergency guardianship request. It was a complete ambush. I felt cornered from the moment I opened the door. The social worker did the usual walkthrough and kept asking all these questions about where I'd been, what my plan was, what steps I was taking to resume being the primary caregiver. I didn't hide anything. I told her I was taking time for my mental health, that I wasn't unstable, that I wasn't having any kind of episode, and that I was planning to live somewhere else long term. I held my ground because I've spent too many years being guilted into dropping everything for everyone else. But then she said something that made everything tilt sideways. If I didn't resume custody and didn't return to the family home, the state would treat it as voluntary relinquishment. And once you do that, you can't just walk back sometime later and try again. It becomes permanent. She said it so matter-of-factly that I had to stop myself from freezing completely. I didn't expect the consequences to be spelled out that clearly. Then came the part I wasn't ready for at all. The kids told her everything I never thought they'd use against me. Times I forgot events because I was exhausted. Times I burned dinner or fell asleep early. Times I got overwhelmed and cried in the corner of the kitchen. Times I had to lie down from stress. None of it was untrue, but hearing it presented like evidence broke something in me. It wasn't lies. It was them pulling out the hardest parts of our life together and handing them over like proof that I shouldn't come back. I didn't yell or defend myself in some dramatic way. I just felt this heavy mix of anger and heartbreak. All those moments that felt private and painful at the time were now being used to build a case that I shouldn't be their parent. And at the same time, I kept thinking back on the years I'd carried everything alone. I don't think any of them understand what that took out of me. In the end, I signed temporary papers that let the kids stay with my sister until things stabilized, which is a word everyone keeps using as if any of this has ever been stable. My sister gave me this smug look the whole time, like she'd been waiting for this moment, like she finally had the chance to prove she was the responsible one. I could feel myself shutting down in the same way I used to when my own mother would corner me as a teenager and tell me I was too much. When I drove back to the coast that night, everything felt mixed together: relief, guilt, fear, anger. It felt like I'd stepped into a version of my life that wasn't mine anymore. Update 3. Being back on the coast felt different this time. The first week I returned after signing the temporary paperwork, I kept trying to convince myself that I'd made a firm decision and that everything would settle if I just focused on building a routine. I started waking up early, walking along the beachfront, trying to keep my mind from slipping back into the same guilt loop that kept hitting me every night. Daniel ended things for good, which shouldn't have surprised me, but it still stung more than I wanted to admit. He said, in his calm way, that he wasn't built to be part of something so tangled, that he felt more like an escape than a real choice. Hearing that hit harder than I expected. It felt like yet another corner of my life I had no footing in. I told myself it was for the best, that now I had nothing tying me emotionally to either place, but it left me feeling silly and exposed. It also made me dig my heels in even more. I wasn't going to run back just because something didn't work out the way I pictured it. I wasn't going to be the woman who folds the minute things get complicated. The calls from home started about a week later. Not the angry ones I'd been bracing for. That would have been easier, honestly. My sister called saying she needed help, that the kids weren't listening to her, that they were taking advantage, that she didn't know how I managed before. There was no anger in her voice, only this exhausted edge. She said Eli was refusing school entirely, shutting down the way he does when he gets overwhelmed. Mila had been sneaking out and skipping classes, and Terrence, the one who always held everything together, was barely home, working long shifts to avoid being in the house. I didn't know what to feel. Then the kids started contacting me directly. Mila called first. She sounded smaller than she wanted to, and she told me she had lied during the guardianship process. She said she exaggerated everything and twisted what she could because she wanted to live with my sister, where she thought she'd get more freedom and attention. She told me she didn't think it would go this far, and now she was scared because my sister was strict in ways she couldn't predict. Hearing her say all that didn't make me angry the way I thought it would. Terrence's confession hit in a different way. He admitted that he encouraged Mila to lie. He said he wanted me gone because he thought my anxiety and exhaustion were making things unstable for everyone, and he wanted to take care of things without dealing with me falling apart. He told me he felt like he'd been parenting everyone for years, and that the only way he could keep everyone steady was if I wasn't dragging the household down. For the first time since leaving, I stopped feeling angry at them. I started seeing how trapped they felt too. Then my sister's lies reached me. Someone I knew messaged me saying she'd been telling people I abandoned the kids to chase some addiction, painting herself as the hero who stepped in to save them. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted to control the narrative and turn herself into the martyr she always thought she was. Hearing that snapped something clean inside me. I realized something important. I am not going to fight to get the kids back, but I am going to fight to keep my sister from using them as trophies in her performance of being the perfect guardian. Final update. I had a mediated meeting last week. I'd been dreading it because I knew whatever came out of that room would be the final shape of things, and there was no undoing any of it after that. I was already tired before it even started. I barely slept the night before because I kept going over every possible way the kids might react, and none of the outcomes looked good. Still, I went in because avoiding it wasn't going to fix anything, and dragging it out would only make things worse for everyone. My sister came in with her usual attitude, like she had already decided she was the only sane adult there. The kids looked worn down, not angry the way they were in the beginning, just flat. The counselor tried to set the tone, but it didn't matter much. Everyone knew why we were there. Terrence spoke first. He surprised me. He didn't raise his voice or try to guilt me. He just said he was planning to move out as soon as he turned 18 and that he didn't want to live with me or my sister. He said he respected that I made a choice for myself, but that he didn't know if he'd ever be able to forgive me. He said he wanted to take care of Eli in the future because he didn't trust anyone else to handle things properly. Hearing that hurt in a different way than anger ever did. Mila went next. She looked embarrassed and irritated at the same time. She admitted she lied during the whole guardianship mess and exaggerated things because she thought living with her aunt would give her more freedom. She didn't try to make excuses. She said she understood why I left, but she still didn't feel like she could rely on me. She said she wanted to live with my parents instead, where things felt calmer. She didn't look at me while she said it. I think that made it sting more. Eli fell apart. There's no better way to describe it. He cried more than I've ever seen him cry. He clung to the sleeve of my jacket and kept saying he didn't understand why everything changed. He talked about keeping little drawings I left around the house and how he slept with my old sweater because it still smelled like home. He kept saying he would try harder and behave better if it meant I'd come back. It broke me. I wanted to grab him and take him with me and undo the whole thing, but I knew that was coming from guilt, not clarity. Going back now would only throw him into another version of instability, and I wasn't going to start the cycle all over again. When it was my turn, I kept things honest. I said I wasn't returning to full-time motherhood. I said I cared about them, and I wasn't running off to disappear, but I couldn't be the primary parent anymore. I told them I could be present in their lives, just not in the way they were used to. Weekly calls, financial support, holidays if they wanted them, help whenever they needed it that didn't require me to live in that house again. I made it clear that this wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about accepting the reality of where things ended up. The biggest surprise came from the social worker. She said my sister's home wasn't a suitable long-term placement because of the emotional volatility and the way she'd been handling the situation. Apparently, there were enough concerns brought up that they couldn't ignore it. My sister lost it right there in the room and started making the whole thing about how ungrateful everyone was. It didn't help her case at all. The kids were moved to my parents' house that afternoon. My sister hasn't spoken to me since, which honestly might be for the best. The plan moving forward is that the kids will stay with my parents until Terrence turns 18. After that, he wants to look into gaining guardianship of Eli. I told him I'd help however I could when the time comes. Mila seems relieved to be somewhere quieter. Eli, I don't know. He's still adjusting. My parents got him into therapy, which he should have had a long time ago. I drove back to the coastal town this morning. The house I'm renting is nothing special, but it's quiet and it's mine. I'm trying to build something steady here. Some days I feel relieved. Some days the guilt hits me so hard I have to sit down. I know people will judge me forever for this. I know there's no version of this where everyone comes out untouched. But the truth is the family was already falling apart long before I left.